order the regular meeting of City Council, August 27th, 2024. If you could please stand and join Ms. Sharpshare for a prayer and a moment of silence and the Pledge of Allegiance.
Dear God, thank you for the many blessings that our community has. We pray for those who are in the offices that govern this community and that they make wise decisions, which are always in the best interest of the community. We pray for those in law enforcement. Please protect them in their line of duty so that they might protect those of us who have placed our trust in them. God, please bless these men and women in the city of government, the mayor's office, the commissions, all elected officials, those who put themselves in harm's way, like law enforcement, firefighters, EMS workers, and certainly bless our citizens. We are so thankful we have all these blessings. Amen. The pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call, please.
Sure. Mr. Tankersley?
Here.
Mrs. Sharpshare? Mr. Cook?
Here.
Mr. Lovett?
Here.
Mr. Cox?
Here.
Mrs. Knight? Here. And Mr. Schmidt?
Here.
Thank you. Are there any corrections or additions to the minutes of our last meeting? Seeing none, the minutes will stand as approved, as written and distributed. Reports and communications, Mayor Hardman.
Thank you. I'm actually going to turn my report over to Rachel Combs, our Human Resources Director, who is going to spend some time sharing with you a little bit about our civil service team.
All right, I'm not much of a public speaker, so I'm just going to read this verbatim. But I've been asked by the Sharonville Civil Service Commission to provide you with an overview of civil service and the Commission's duties. The Commission is responsible for administering and enforcing civil service laws as outlined by the Ohio Revised Code. It is composed of 3 citizens appointed by the mayor, along with 1 citizen secretary appointed by the Commission. The Commission oversees the hiring process for certain positions within the city, including patrol officers, firefighters, and most non-exempt hourly positions classified under civil service. These roles typically require examination and the establishment of an eligibility list from which those candidates are selected. And then the appointed secretary arranges these examinations and maintains the list for appointing authorities. The appointing authorities are the City of Sharonville and then also Princeton City School District. And then we have kind of a new makeup of the commission. John Carlberg has been on the commission for 16 years and now serves as the chairman. Member Wendy Lindsay has been with the commission for 6 years. And our newest member, Mike Wilson, was sworn in July. And then, of course, Gina's been with us for a couple years as the secretary. And then the commission meets regularly on the second Tuesday of each month and encourages anyone to attend to learn more or share concerns. Are there any questions? All right.
Just a
Yep, go.
I was just going to say just a comment. So I've been involved with civil service commissions in 3 different cities, and I could say without hesitation that the Civil Service Commission here is probably the hardest working and most involved body of any city that I've been involved with. So for that, you guys are to be commended.
Rachel, I want to thank you also for giving the update with the newest member who's familiar with a lot of us up here. And congratulations to John on the promotion. And I forgot your name already. Wendy. And I just want to say thank you all. And can't forget the most important person, Gina. I just want to thank you all for doing what you're doing.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you all for joining us tonight. Thanks for taking a few minutes out of your time. I know it was pretty simple. I know there were some questions that folks had that had been shared, so we wanted to make sure you all knew who these faces were and what they do, and they don't have to stick around any longer if they don't want to, so I think they're probably all going to dart for the exits, I would assume. But thanks for coming out tonight, everybody. And that's really all I have to report this evening, so thank you.
Any questions for Mayor Hardman? Seeing none, Safety Service Director, Mr. Lucas.
Thank you. So last week, we had an employee appreciation function at the community center. Very great event. Kudos to the committee that puts that together. I want to thank the council members who were able to attend that event, as well as city council as a whole for supporting financially those efforts. Employees love it. It's really a nice event where we can gather informally, meet others from other departments, and have some fun, which typically we don't do as in the work environment. So thanks for council for that. There's only one piece of legislation this evening, Ordinance 2024 R003. Steve Busham's here to talk about the aspect how it relates to our downtown loop.
I don't know about you, Jim, but I have fun at work every day. Anyway, Ordinance 2024 R03E is establishing the boundaries of sidewalk repair and maintenance within the streetscape area. So we're currently in design for the southbound streetscape on the loop from Cornell Road down to Sharon Road. We received federal funding for that project. That federal funding is designated for between right-of-way line to right-of-way line. It is the public portion of the roadway. There are areas where that right-of-way line goes to the front of the building. There are other areas where that right-of-way stops short of the front of the building. The building's set back a little bit farther. If you look at that sidewalk right now, the tooling of the sidewalk, the brake lines extend all the way up to the fronts of the buildings, and it appears to have been done at the same time as the last concrete work. As it stands, without this ordinance, we would either not be able to pursue federal funding for those sections of sidewalk that extend to the front of the buildings. We could pay it out of pocket, or we would have to get right-of-way. This resolution will allow the city to assume future repair and maintenance of those pieces of sidewalk from the right-of-way line to the building fronts that are included in this streetscape area for city maintenance. That will allow us to use those grant monies as part of the project to incorporate those areas of sidewalk into the project. Keep a nice clean look on our streetscape program by including a couple sections of sidewalk, some pieces of sidewalk all the way up to the building front. Otherwise, there would be small pieces of old sidewalk mixed in with the new between the right-of-way line and the building fronts. That maybe is a little bit of a cumbersome way to say that, but this will allow us to use the federal funds to extend our decorative concrete to the fronts of some of these buildings. Are there any questions? As such, we will also then assume the maintenance and repair of these pieces of concrete going forward. It would still require an agreement with the property owners for us to do the work that allows us to go after that, use that federal funding. Are there any questions?
Just one clarification, it's the agenda, it's a resolution, not an ordinance.
Right, thank you.
All right, thank you. I don't have a report tonight, but like Jim, I want to thank the committee that put together the Employee Appreciation Luncheon. I'd like to thank Rachel for the wellness portion of that. I thought it was very beneficial to have the different tables there for people to go up and talk about wellness during that event. It was nice to talk to employees. I spent several hours there walking around, and every one of them did express their appreciation to the city and to City Council for help supporting that. So thank you to you all as well. That's all for my report. Clerk of Council, Ms. Buhite.
No report.
Thank you. Auditor, Mr. Cunningham.
We are roughly 58% of the year spent. We spent about 51% of that budget. And so really, if you look at what's actually encumbered, we're about right on track even with 58%, 59% through the year. So on the other side of the ledger, it looks like we're, from a cash perspective, we're starting to build a little cushion in our working cash. And, that's good news. And looks like as of right now, that could be coming from the receipt side, which maybe Kurt will talk about. But it appears that by the end of the year, assuming things are going along the way they are right now, we should end up with a pretty good amount to transfer to capital for future use for 25. So that's what it appears to be happening as of now. So that's my report.
Thank you. Any questions for Mr. Cunningham? All right. Seeing none, Treasurer, Mr. Ryrie.
Thank you. This is the July report, and we are now 58.3% through the year. The income tax is up 7.6% year to date. The motel tax is down 24.04% year to date. I did want to touch briefly on our investments. We've done well again through Star Ohio. We've got currently the interest rate at Star Ohio for our investments is 5.43%. Red Tree Investments, in the month of July, we had gross earnings of $107,000, almost $108,000 in interest alone. And as you'll see in the report on the interest income year to date, we actually have 1.5, almost 1.6 million in interest income alone for this year to date. And that's up over almost 37% where it was last year. So all of our funds are on pace, or all the reported funds you see in the report are on pace or exceeding the budgeted amount, except the motel tax, which is slightly below where it was this time last year. So that's my report. Any questions?
All right. Seeing none, thank you. Law Director, Mr. Lippert.
I don't have anything to report. I'm happy to take questions if anybody has anything.
Any questions for Mr. Lippert? All right. Seeing none, Finance Director Scott McKeon has a Finance Department annual report.
Good evening. They didn't want to stick around for the popcorn. Yeah. All right.
I'll cut them off in 5 minutes.
Yeah. So, 2023 was a really good year for the city. We welcomed a few new members to our team since we gave this report last August. Noah Pennington joined us last September. All these additions were over in the tax group. Noah joined us. He was a recent graduate of Trine University, grew up, still lives up in Lebanon, Ohio. Jason Lopez comes to us from the New York City area, bachelor's degree in business, had several years of experience in hospitality, and is an actual fluent in Spanish and a resident of our Sharonville West Side. Dina Maps has over 30 years experience in supervisory experience in sales and restaurant industry. So we were really happy to bring in kind of a group with a very diverse background there to kind of help round out the team. We lost a couple of key members here. Martha Cross-Frunk retired at the end of 2023. She had been with us since 2013 when she had already been with us as tax commissioner. So she has retired finally for good. David Winks retired as well. He joined us back in 15-16. Part-time, went full-time, went part-time, retired, went part-time again. So he gave us several years of great service. We really enjoyed both of them. So sad to see them go. There's kind of a snapshot of what the team looks like as a whole, and how long everybody's been with the city. So a few highlights from the last year. I know just in the last, it was early Monday, I think you got an email from the Auditor of State, our audit manager leading that they were concluding the audit. You got a copy of the draft report that was headed to the Clerk of the Bureau for eventual release. I suspect that you might get another email that'll be kind of confusing when that's at the Clerk of the Bureau that you would have gotten in past years, that the report's out there for review. So this year was a little bit more informal version of that it was coming. So it looks like we have a clean audit report, no management letters, a couple of verbal recommendations. We were back with the Auditor of State for the first time in 10 years. We were out with Plattenberg and Associates, where we got 10 clean audit reports, clean audit opinions. We picked up an assistant finance director from them. That's where Luke used to work. So that was a good relationship that worked out well. We were back with the state this year. Because we were a single audit especially, which means we spent over $750,000 in federal funds, we had a federal single audit completed. So they gave us a financial statement audit opinion back in June that we submitted to GFOA, to our ACFR. It's a couple hundred pages of financial data. So we submitted that audited financial statements off for the GFOA reward. We're just now wrapping up, concluding the actual audit report. So what that is the actual Yellow Book audit report and a single audit report. So, in February, we got awarded Certificate of Excellence for GFOA for the 2022 audit report that we had submitted last year. We've been awarded that every year since 2001. So, some more updates. Tax just went live with the CMI Authority product, which was a software upgrade for them. They just went live with that about a week and a half ago. So, so they've been very busy over there. Linda's just been out of the office, had to have some surgery, and so we were kind of under the gun and got that going. And seems to be going well for both her and her recovery, and also the software. So, we all attended some training here over the last year. Linda and Noah went off to the OML tax conference. Linda represented the city in a couple of different sessions at that conference. Usually she's on at least a panel for that every year. And then Luke and I, kind of as a follow-up, last December, the article was in Government Finance Review that we co-authored with Shane from GFOA about the city's risk study and our approach to risk and fund balance. Kind of as a follow-up to that, we were invited, Luke and I participated on a panel, part of GFOA's best practice. They did an online seminar over about a week's period at the beginning of August. So we participated in a 90-minute session along with the city from South Carolina that was kind of down there in the hurricane zone and their approach to risk, and a city out in California. They're in California. They have a lot of risk. So it was a good discussion. That went well. We were happy to participate. So we had IT problems. We had done our presentation specific to Sharonville already, so our big lift was done, and there was kind of a Q&A section late. And we were in the conference room, and we could not keep the Zoom meeting. It just kept shutting down. So we were like 3 strikes were out. So we ran into my office, flipped the monitor around to show us at the table, and we get it up, and we're answering a question, and I look up and realize that we're sitting with these blinds behind us, side by side, and we look just like in the office when they would interview people up against the blinds. So I don't really want to watch the training or listen to myself again, but it went really well. So we touched on this last year. This is our motel tax refunds. We talked about this in the annual report and also kind of at year end. So there's several years worth of data here, and you can see this is where year to date 2024 is. It is $1 million. So this is, I actually checked back in 8 or 9 when we kind of tipped the schedule, tipped the scales at just around $1 million back then. We've already eclipsed that, so this is going to be the 3rd highest tax refunds of all time. So the good news is we really we wanted to build up the fund balance reserve. We pay tax refunds out of Fund 707, if you can kind of see that monthly in the auditor and treasurer report. So we're trying to get that fund balance up to where we would like that to be, so we can stomach a high year of tax refunds. Traditionally, we were budgeting about $750,000 worth of income tax receipts to be steered, about 3% of gross collections, to this refund thing. We really geared that up. We about doubled it, so we're up in the 5 to 6% range. So the good news is we are pacing, and receipts are actually outpacing refunds. The bad news is that refunds are still pacing with the contributions, and so we're not going to be able to drop that back down like we would like to, and we will someday when this kind of comes back down to the average. The average right now is just under $1 million. I don't know that we're ever going to come back to the $600,000 and $700,000, but you can see that what the page does show is there's going to be volatility, so we're not going to be in the 1.3, 1.5 forever. This is going to sort of evolve. So tax refunds can be volatile. There can be big refunds. So big receipts bring bigger refunds as well. So this is part of the business. If this does stay true, we budgeted 1.45 million, so there's a really decent chance we're going to come in here and ask for a little bit of additional appropriations to kind of see us through to the end of the year. So, kind of our set-asides. Ed alluded to this earlier in the report. This table is kind of showing what the general fund set-aside history has been. We've done some pretty substantial set-asides since 2015. The average since 2015, we've set aside approximately $3.9 million, whether it be for debt, separation benefits, facilities, or mostly for capital. A few things to kind of point out here, a little bit of volatility here at the end of the list. We only did $3.6 million in 2022. A couple of things happened there. We did some pretty substantial advances out for kind of pre-funding the bridge project. So as that project is wrapping up, we're getting ready to bring a lot of those resources back. So the general fund is actually going to grow quite quickly. So that's going to kind of happen this fall. The other thing that happened is this is actually when we wrapped up that last risk study, and we realized that, hey, we need to grow our fund balance kind of to scale up to, we're not 2014 anymore. We need to grow fund balance as we've grown the operation. So that year sort of absorbed the cost of raising the fund balance. I'll say 2023 is a little bit inflated, and we'll point this out later on in the budget versus actual statement, but I mean, we had a lot of federal dollars, the ARPA funds, that we put to use in 2023 and avoided some otherwise general fund expenditures. So that number is a little bit inflated beyond what are just basic general fund receipts and expenditures can do. So I think 2024 is going to be pretty amazing, but 2025 might fall down closer to that average.
Which at $3.9 million is pretty amazing. So
It is.
let's just leave it at that. So,
True,
but
true, yeah. Here's just a quick snapshot, the same kind of information for fire. What we've done with those resources, a similar formula there. We've also grown the fund balance over there pretty substantially in recent years. This one's kind of an interesting one. This we presented this last year too. We kind of rolled it forward and to 2023 data, and then kind of took snapshots of 5 years and 10 years. This is our governmental type assets. So this is all of our assets besides senior housing and convention center. They're not reflected here. They're business type assets. So these are government type assets. People in the industry call them the GTA. So it's netted depreciation. So if we don't spend on new capital, these numbers will contrast. You can actually see that on the purple because that is our buildings and building improvements. And we didn't do anything substantial with buildings in between 13 and 18, so you can kind of see this number shrank a little bit. It's going to. We're depreciating these buildings over a 20 or 50 year kind of life cycle, depending on what the improvement was. So that kind of shrunk. You can see where it's taken a pretty big jump forward here. That's encompassing the new police station that went online kind of after post 18, kind of rolling out of 2020, 2021. New police station being the big one, the Station 87 remodel being also rather large, the roof kind of on the south end of City Hall, the admin renovation. So this number really kind of took a big leap forward here. You can see where we've made substantial investments in infrastructure ever since 2013 and beyond. So that number is substantially grown. So things like land and CIP, construction in progress, those things aren't depreciated. So once we allocate this reddish orange to the appropriate asset class when that project is done, those things will begin to depreciate as well. So kind of interesting to see where our net of depreciation, kind of where that flows. So, and that we continue to invest in our assets and infrastructure. Also similar to last year, this is kind of a roll forward of construction in progress. It shows a couple of things. In a post-COVID world, no project ever finishes. It just lingers on. And Also, it just kind of shows the volume of activity we've kind of done over the last 5 or 6 years. There's a lot of projects we've been working on. So, just a few items to share. Like I said, our annual comprehensive financial report, the ACFR, is a couple hundred pages long. So just a couple of snapshots out of there that I like to look at. The first one is from the stats tables. This is in the very back. This is showing kind of our income tax broken out by top 10 employers. So you can kind of see our total at $33.5 million. We squeaked out, kind of beating out 2022, best year ever. And there's where 2021 was. The number I kind of like to keep an eye on is the percentage of the top 10. So the top 10, what portion of income does that make up? So that was 26.82 last year. It jumped up a little bit here. We've seen a lot of growth in our top 10. They're very healthy. The UAW got a new contract. Gorilla Glue's seen a fair amount of growth in the last few years. I'm sure I'm leaving out a few other members of that top 10 that have grown and been quite healthy in the last year and a half. That was as low as 24.75 back in 2021. That was the all-time low. And in 99, that was as high as 38.97%, which that's a little higher. Our economy is a whole lot more diverse today than it was back then. So this is an interesting sheet. I think it tells a lot of the story. And there you can kind of see a snapshot of where we were back in 2014, 9 years ago. We were at, I can't read it, but 23 million, I think it was. That was back when we thought 23 million might not hold very long. So, this is a statement from the middle kind of the financial statements. It's at a cash basis. This is the one that I think you could most relate to. It's the budget versus actual. When I'm looking at a set of government financial statements, this is the one I like to go to first. This is just showing the general fund, and it is showing it compared to, this is the original budget. So these numbers are exactly what we showed in the budget book and what you approved. You approved a number that was this number plus this transfer out number right here. And then revenue is what we showed in the budget book of, you can kind of see down here, this number right here, this 22 is positive. That's, we were a balanced budget. We don't update revenue estimates quite the same that we do expenses when you appropriate. This final budget is kind of the accumulation of all the appropriation amendments during the year. So this is, you could tie all this stuff right back to legislation. And this is how it compares to actual. So this kind of tells the story of the auditor treasurer's report. You know, it's where we beat our receipt estimates. We're pretty conservative on those. We beat our expense estimates. We're pretty conservative when compiling those. This is where that ARPA money's coming true. We took the standard deduction and assumed that we lost over $1.4 million of that ARPA money. And so we used that to sort of replace some safety salaries from our police department. So that's a big piece of what this $2.2 million variance is right here. Interest earnings, obviously we're very healthy up top. I kind of did some quick calculations for the general fund. Income tax made up 83.7% of revenue. It's a little bit lower than it has been in recent years, I would suspect. And a big part of that was it was sort of diluted by investment earnings among some other revenue sources. This is the same statement. It relates to just the fire fund. There's a little bit less going on, less expenditure types, less revenue types, but the same concept, the original budget, the final budget, and actual numbers. For them, income tax made up 89.9% of revenue, which is, it's a pretty healthy percentage. They've been at or above 90% for quite a while here. In their case, they took a big jump forward here. We don't really have comparative data other than the budget, which is close, but ambulance billings are really kind of surging forward. They went with a new billing company. They've been fairly successful with that. So what we have going on right now, we're quickly getting into budget season. The budget work session is scheduled for November 14th. We're targeting getting out digital budget books November 1st. The income tax, we're really focusing a lot. We've been focusing on cross-training quite a bit. We're really putting in, kind of doubling down on that. Becky Russ is scheduled to retire in July 2025, unless we can change her mind. And so that's a pretty significant void. She focuses on business return, which is sort of a little bit of a niche that not too many people in the tax group have touched. They're mostly working on individual taxes. So, and then we kind of have just a little bit of a snapshot of income tax receipts to date, very similar to what Kurt was referencing. We're kind of seeing a little bit of a downward trend on business profits, which I said back in 2021 they were, they were really high in 2020 and 2019, and then I was proved wrong because in 2021 and 2022 they set all-time records and went even higher. But we're returning a little bit more to a norm here. So we're seeing a little bit of a drop in business profits / net profits. But I mean, that's only a small portion of the tax portfolio as a whole. Withholdings is what tells the true story. You don't necessarily want to look at just 1 month of withholdings because it can kind of vary based on the number of pay periods that are being collected, different things that are seasonal. But when you start to look at withholdings, like in this case, 7 months worth of data or a whole year's worth of data, withholdings is the truth teller. It can kind of tell you, who's going to work. Business profits don't have near the population. There's just not as many businesses as there are workers. And also you can have healthy businesses reinvesting in their own business, which will actually generate less taxes, but it's not the sign of it can still be the sign of a healthy business. So, any questions?
Go back to the slide.
Yeah.
How do we have negative findings?
That is a budget variance. So all that is saying is, this number, we did not change it in the budget, and we probably should have lowered the bar. There's other scenarios where, I guess we didn't necessarily do that. We didn't lower the bar for anybody this year. We have in the past. We've lowered the bar in the past before. The important thing is that number there is obviously positive. If this number was negative, the auditors would actually look at that and say, according to 570536E, you should have actually, you add that to your fund balance. Did you actually have the resources to keep these appropriations? So that's sort of like the monitoring of the intricacy of that game. Yeah.
I'd just like to say thank you so much because I'm not real big with numbers, and you and your staff have done an excellent job keeping us on board. Thank you.
I did have one question. Quite a few slides back, we were talking about the refunds, right? And we're at a spike right now. But you mentioned that you expect that to kind of balance. What would give that projection due to the fact that, inflation's incomes are rising, more employment, all that coming in town? Why would you think that the refunds would go down?
Just the volatility we've seen in the past that you can see where if you ran the numbers pre-2022, you can kind of see where these things are kind of falling up and down. So we've never really seen a continuous, right here, probably 2015 through 2018, we saw a little bit of things continue to grow, but they eventually come back, we had. So, yes, I do think that part of this 1.5 is that inflation, and we're not going to go back to $600,000, $700,000 again. But I don't think that we're going to stay at 1.5 pegged out at the left forever either. So, and we can handle 1.6s, 8th. It's just sort of like balancing out and staying ahead of the game. So we're putting up the average right now, and maybe it's not the greatest thing, it's about $1 million. So we're at 1.5 because we want to get that fund balance back up a little bit, around $1 million. We're probably at $600,000-$700,000 now. So we're trying to pace that to where we can get it back down to, we budget the average, which will be a little bit more money will go into the general fund and the fire fund at that point. But it also means we can stomach a $2 million, when we only put in $1 million, we would be okay for at least the year. Yeah.
Any other questions? Thank you for the report.
Thank you.
All right, this time, are there any residents desiring to be heard before council this evening? No? All right, so we'll move on from that. Council committees, community development, Mr. Tankersley.
Thank you, sir. The next BZA meeting is scheduled for September 11th at 6:30, and then the Planning Commission meeting will be scheduled for 7 p.m. that same evening. Thank you.
That's Mrs. Cole's last evening as a participant of the BZA?
That is correct, yes.
All right, well, we'll thank her for her year or two of service. Any questions for Mr. Tankersley? All right, seeing none. Budget and Finance, Mr. Cook.
Thank you. No reports for budget and finance or project oversight. Our next two meetings for both those committees are still yet to be determined. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions for Mr. Cook? Seeing none. Mr. Lovett, Community Services.
Thank you. Good evening. No report tonight for community services, but our next meeting will be Wednesday, September 4th at 4 p.m. in the administrative conference room. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions for Mr. Lovett? Seeing none. Honored citizens, Ms. Knight.
Okay. Tonight, I'll be honoring Michael Bloomer and his pool staff for having a very successful season. This year has been a wonderful time to go to the pool. Whenever I went, I saw everyone doing a great job, not to mention keeping everyone safe. Also, I'd like to thank Michael for the whippy dip machine. It was delicious. And they've added sprinkles this year.
Thank you. Are there any questions for Ms. Knight? Seeing none, I'll have to get down there and try out the whippy dip machine before they close it. Law and Public Safety, Mr. Schmidt.
Thank you. The next Law and Public Safety Committee meeting will be Tuesday, September 3rd, 4 p.m. Administrative Conference Room. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions for Mr. Schmidt? All right, seeing none. We do have a rule suspension in motion, so I need a motion for rule suspension for Resolution 2024-R-03-E for the second and third reading. Mr. Cox, thank you for the first. Mr. Lovett, thank you for the second. Is there any discussion? All right, seeing none, all those in favor, yes?
Yes.
Any opposed, no? All right, with that, that is passed. Thank you. Unfinished business, Ms. Buhite.
And second and third reading of Emergency Resolution 2024-R03E, establishing the boundaries of sidewalk repair and maintenance within the streetscape area of the downtown Sharonville southbound loop and declaring an emergency.
Thank you. Is there a motion for Resolution 2024-R-03-E? So moved by Ms. Sharpshire. Mr. Cook, thank you for the second. Any discussion? Seeing none, roll call, please.
Mr. Tankersley?
Yes.
Mrs. Sharpshire?
Yes.
Mr. Cook?
Yes.
Mr. Lovett?
Yes.
Mr. Cox?
Yes.
Mrs. Knight?
Yes.
And Mr. Schmidt?
Yes.
Emergency Resolution 2024-R03 has been approved.
Thank you. There's no new business, correct? All right, moving on. Last time this evening for any residents to be heard before City Council this evening. No. All right, blank stares. Thank you. Any other matters to be heard before council this evening? Mr. Cook.
I'd like Mrs. Knight to give us the exact date when the root beer stand will close.
The root beer stand is closing September 1st, Sunday. I'm thinking around 3 o'clock. When we run out of food and root beer, we close. So if you're going to plan to come later, maybe call to make sure we're open. So we had a very successful season. Again, the reason for closing is the bees are terrible. Today, Eric got an email from someone asking why he's not controlling the bees. He said, "I'm not Mother Nature." So, and we lost a lot of kids to sports and colleges, so it's a good time. So, thank you, Dave, for asking.
Thank you.
Any other matters?
I got one, Paul.
Yes, sir, Mr. Tankersley.
I just want to let everybody know on the committee for the veteran banners. The proofs are going out. My brother sent me his proof, and they look very, very good. So just if anybody was interested in that, the proofs were sent out. So, but my brother's turned out really good. He didn't realize how thin he was when he was like 18, 19 years old compared to how he is today. So I just wanted to pass that little bit along and thank Anna for the work she's done also. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Sharpshire?
So I just want to circle back from last meeting. I can't help from keep bringing up the Sharks, but we had such a successful season that I forgot to thank our hospitality sponsors. They donated food to our hospitality for coaches and officials to avoid a feeding frenzy among the Sharks. So we had charcuterie creations with a donation, and Already Cafe with a very generous donation for breakfast. And then we also had Qdoba and Jersey Mike's, local here in Blue Ash. But I had to highlight our Sharonville businesses because they went over and above for hospitality, and we all really appreciated it. And also for Glenn for going and picking up a bunch of the stuff. Thank you.
Thank you. Excellent job, Mr. Lovett. All right. Any other matters for council? Seeing none, do I have a motion for adjournment? Mr. Tankersley, thank you. Do I have a second? Mr. Cook, thank you for the second. We are adjourned.